Today we have Eric Robinson with us, 24 years, FBI special agent, former Baptist pastor. Part one of this was titled Predators Change Their Tactics and Most Parents Haven't Noticed. We covered the big picture. So today we're going to get specific. We're going to go case by case, threat by threat, and give parents the kind of information they can actually use. There was one case I was reading about a 15-year-old. She thought she bought Percocet on Snapchat. It turned out to be fentanyl, and she ended up dying in her bedroom. Her parents had no idea she was doing what she was doing. So, Eric, you were a pastor before the FBI, which is kind of an amazing story. You've seen this from both the spiritual side and the law enforcement side. What's actually happening right now that parents need to understand about this phenomenon?
Well, I think the answer is to what you're asking is in the spiritual side or just the human relations side. So in law enforcement, my job isn't to prevent this, it's to bring justice almost always after the fact, that these are people who are trading in child pornography, meeting up with kids. And now after having done that, we catch them. We find guys who are trying to do this more. Their victims are ones who are not in a stabilized family. And sometimes that's mental illness and you can't do anything about it. Sometimes it's just other difficulties, but the prevention that keeps your kid out of the target of these predators is creating that space where they can speak freely. They are comfortable. They're not judged. They know that they're loved. They know that there's nothing they can say that is going to turn you against them. And we talked about the fears. Like, I'm glad that I'm past those fears of school shootings. You are now having to enter into it. Yeah. And at the same time, you are also trying to establish something now with your young child to say, oh, let me set up this relationship where you can feel comfortable speaking to me. For me, those computers, gadgets, and internet were developing while my kids are developing, whereas you've seen it and now you can go, hey, I got to get ahead of this. I mean, I was in the moment. You can get ahead of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's a lot of anxieties I have as my daughter enters the public school system, and school shootings are one. But I also, honestly, the fentanyl for me is scary too, because it's very candy-like, right? Like, it's just a pill, and kids could definitely take it without even knowing what it is or what it could do, right? Especially with the peer pressure of just, my friend did this, so I'm going to do this as she gets older. And counterfeit pills, pressed fentanyl that looks exactly like prescription drugs, are being sold on Snapchat, Telegram, Instagram, DMs. It's easy to get from what I've heard from those on the inside. So a kid thinks they're buying Adderall maybe, and it's fentanyl. So how pervasive is this right now? And what can parents do beyond being up their kids' business all the time? But what really can we do, and how pervasive is this?
Well, I think probably first is going to be educating yourself on it, of what drugs are kids seeking, what might be something your child would be possibly in line for, learning what the effects are, trying to see any changes in behavior as well. And there's always too, like, hey man, I don't know if this is cliche for you, but for me, I always wanted to be the house that had the kids over. So here's the friend group that had 4 or 5 of them, and as much as possible, I want them at my place because I know this is safe and I know there's nothing going on. So it's getting to know those parents of other groups, but also making sure, hey, I'm setting this up where you're glad to bring your friends, your 1 or 2 friends, whatever it is, to the sleepovers, to the study nights, to the parties, and we're going to do it at our house, and our house is a safe place. Yeah. And then just getting to know those other friends, finding out. I mean, I'll tell you this, like, there's certain levels. There's that trust level of just talking. And then I came from the FBI. Maybe you get some informants out there.
Yeah, I want some of those informants. If you have any connections still, send them over to my daughter's school. I need to know the intel, who she's hanging out with, what their family's like, do they do drugs, that kind of thing. Talking about fentanyl, the test strips are now legal in most states. And Narcan's available over the counter. Should that be something parents should just kind of have readily available? Like, what's your opinion on that?
Man, I mean, maybe you're asking the right guy, but I was going to say you're asking the wrong guy. As each of my kids have grown up, have their own vehicle, I put together a trauma kit. So, I mean, there's Band-Aid stuff, and then here's a tourniquet, here is wadding, here's alcohol. I put everything in there for the terrible instance that there's a difficult car accident or a school shooting, whatever it might be. Here is a quick trauma kit. And so when you ask me, should you have Narcan? I'm like, yeah, man, in my medical kit, among the dozen tourniquets I have, I also have Narcan because why not? And you say over the counter, so that's great. But in my kids' community college, like you can just pick it up; they'll give it to
Oh,
you.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know it was that readily available. That's like you said, having the preparation for whatever, um, definitely alleviates some anxiety of like, hopefully you don't have to use this, but if I do, I remember my wife, like, before our daughter was even born, she's like, "We need a med kit in our car." Like,
Yes.
it was one of those things like I was like, "Oh, we're never gonna need to use this kind of thing." But yeah, like we had it before she
Okay.
was even
So
born.
then
It's
you
like one of
throw it
those
away
things.
after
Yeah.
20 years. Use it.
And getting back to the school shooting, because we touched on this before. I think we even started the live stream of like you mentioned you have a kid, a teen, I should say, in high school, right? Like kind of getting on the out, like starting to exit out of high school, and I have a kid entering the public school system. So school shootings are definitely on my radar. And so from the bureau's side, they always say like this guy just snapped, but is that necessarily true, or is there more to it than that?
No. So, for instance, and as we talked, I was reading
Hmm.
Dave Cullen's book called Columbine, which is on Columbine, and the Bureau's analysis of the two shooters, Klebold and Harris, was that they had been planning this for a long time. This was their intention. So there can always be occasions where somebody's on the edge, and then this event happens, and now they decide. It's most often, though, that they wanted to do this, like they had planned, and then that event that snaps them is like, okay, now I'm going to. So there's so often leakage. It depends on who it's to and who's observing it. With Klebold and Harris, there was a lot. But again, since they were almost the first to get involved, at least they're the one who kicked off this new era of school shootings. I think those things maybe weren't paid attention to as much.
Yeah, and that term leakage, what is it like for just kind of the normal person outside of the FBI, and how often does it actually happen before an attack?
Leakage is intended or unintended slipping of information and intent. So many times, the kids or the person who is looking to carry out a shooting, a mass shooting, they kind of want people to know about it. And so they'll say these little things like,
Oh,
things are going to change when I do something, or they let things out that are possible threats. And they may also do it unintentionally too, of just letting on without being aware of who's listening. And those are the things that you can address without having to go DEFCON 1 on something. It's taking it to someone else who might be better to evaluate the situation. And I don't think any police officer or FBI agent would get upset if you're taking something that's a possible mass shooting threat and saying, hey, I'm just laying this out there. Here's information. I'm available for recontact. Let me know what else might need to be known. And then those informants you had, now they can go to work.
yeah. And in any of the cases you worked, was there a time where another kid kind of knew it was going to go down, and maybe from that leakage or just their intuition, their gut?
Yeah, no, it wasn't gut. It was knowledge.
Okay.
So
Oh, wow.
we had two mass shooters that were going to team up together, and they had someone close to them who came forward and said, hey, look, this is what they say, this is what they're intending. Like, they were sharing what they thought was in a safe space with someone else, and that person's like, this is not safe, and went to the
Ugh.
FBI. That's how we worked up a case on them. It was, and now while we were looking at, okay, they're online just praising mass shooters. One of the subjects, female, wrote a fan letter to Dylan Roof, who killed 9 people, I think it was, in a South Carolina church. So, I
Oh.
mean, there was a lot there that they were giving off, and one person came forward. The other situation, I mean, kind of strange. The tip that I got there was from NCIS. And it was just an odd thing where it was a kid who had homicidal and suicidal ideology. He got a separation from the Navy. They chose not to give him a dishonorable discharge. They just separated. And rather than actually now report this to the NICS system where he could be prevented from having firearms, they decided, like, we'll just like tip the FBI in his area and maybe they'll have an eye for him. So just a strange one where the Navy in this case passed the buck and said, well, we're not going to do anything, but like maybe you should look at them. And then while looking at him, now he's online posting pictures with his guns, saying very racist stuff and like all of it.
Yeah.
Other.
What do you recommend parents do? Let's say they find some of that imagery or the conversation of like, hey, this is their plan of having a school shooting. Let's say that is your kid. What does a parent do at that point? Do they turn their kid in? Do they contact the police? Like, what do you feel like the best approach is there? Yeah, for sure. That there's so many layers there and levels to that. So I want to get into the sextortion plots because the FBI just issued a warning in 24 about a massive spike in these cases. I think we talked about in part 1 about this as well. So you were in the Bureau working crimes against children when this started kind of escalating. Walk us through what sextortion looks like in 26.
Well, I'm not a computer guy, but it looks something like this. Magic happens by these guys and they're hacking into people's accounts. This is often coming through iCloud or however they're going to be brute forcing or using social knowledge to guess passwords. So they're getting into, I'll just say a man gets into a woman or a girl's computer and now having pulled inappropriate photos that she might happen to have kept on her phone, having sent that to a boyfriend or significant other. Now they are threatened with, I will post these online. I will send these to your family if you do not send something new to me. And I mean, it's a harrowing situation. It's very frightening and it's traumatizing. And I think one of the things we talked about is that was often done with the 764 nihilist group, that they would do the same. There was a lot of extortion. And then as they brought the kids in, now the kids were joining in the event as well. So they were first victims and later victimizing too.
Wow. And how many of these groups do you feel like are out there? And are a lot of them from like Nigeria, the Ivory Coast, outside the US as well?
The sextorting ones are like the 764 type.
Yeah, the sextortion, or is it different? I mean, I don't know. Like
so they are more likely. See, here's the thing: they are often going to be people that or have had some type of contact. Often, not always, but I mean, how does Jill Smith in Fort Wayne, Indiana, get picked as the victim to be sexually extorted? Like, how do you pick her? So that's either because Billy Jones knows her from high school, from past work, like has had this fascination with her, or for some reason, Jill Smith has like drawn attention to herself online such that this person who doesn't know her now gets to know her in this way and says, oh, I like that bikini picture. I like that whatever thing you said. And now I have a fascination. I'm going to extort you.
So it's not random. It's almost like what they say, like most crimes are committed by someone you knew, right? Like you've interacted with or at least have some sort of relationship with. Is that kind of the same thing in terms of these sextortion plots?
It often is. It won't always be, but it often will be. And I don't know did we talk about the adjunct professor that was sexually extorting girls?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So years ago, we had that very case where there was a man who had taken over a woman's Facebook account, had sextorted her, and then was using that Facebook profile of the first victim to now sextort other women in the friends list. And now those secondary victims were filing police reports, sending death threats to the first victim because they thought she was doing it, whereas it was the subject who had taken over the account. So hugely traumatizing for her in many different ways. And this man who was our subject was unknown, and he bragged to each woman that he extorted. The FBI will never catch me. Nobody can ever catch me. So we had a computer team. I mean, we didn't have the case. A computer team from headquarters came in and said, hey, we cracked this case that you didn't know you had in your backyard. It's an adjunct professor at a local university. So mid-20s guy, probably just finished a master's or into his doctorate program. Smart kid. He was a chess master. We go to his campus adjacent apartments where there's just a bunch of little ones connected. And the computer team had told us this kid likely has a kill switch on his laptop. So we need to separate him from his laptop.
Oh my goodness. That there's some humor in that in terms of like, gladly, like, but there's also something that's very dark and like knowing that like these guys don't necessarily look like they're bad, right? They could be they could be young, they could be highly educated, they'd be working for a university, I just came from a university. I know that like I work with adjuncts all the time in my line of work, and you would
Yeah.
never assume anyone was doing, I'm not saying they were, but I mean, like in that line of work, they would be affiliated with that. It's just crazy to me. And so it kind of opens up more of these tabs in my head of like, oh my gosh, this is what I should be worried about even more so. You don't know anybody really. And these things all happen because you do know somebody, right? Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know. It's just, uh,
And then the final, which made me think of this, is the first girl was from his high school. Like they went to high school together, and he had
yeah.
like they had moved on. He had moved to our area. She had moved somewhere else, and then he was getting other friends from her Facebook who, hey, she would be great to extort this girl too. I remember her, and so it comes
Yeah.
back to yeah. And this was so long ago, and I wasn't deeply involved in the case, but I'm guessing that that had something to do with how our cyber team cracked this to see, boom, man, they all
Yeah.
went to
The
the same high
connection.
school. Look at
Yeah.
this, or many of them did.
Yeah. And this case in 23, a 17-year-old boy in Michigan unfortunately killed himself after being sextorted. His family had no idea it was happening. The FBI tracked the perpetrators to Nigeria.
Mm,
So basically, predators taking photos, innocent
yeah,
photos, right, online and creating nude images with AI through it. So, how do we even protect our kid from that? Because it's like, do we just not post photos of our kids ever? I mean, is that like kind of the only thing we can do, or it just feels like we're giving in to the terrorists at that point, right? Like, I mean, that's just kind of how I'm feeling. But what do you think
yeah.
about that?
I mean, if you want to be as safe as you can, then yes. Also, part of it is in the example I gave
Yeah.
that, hey, why is Jill Smith being targeted? She's either known by this guy or has done something online to draw attention to herself. So if you're suddenly now even somewhat Instagram famous, okay, that's probably going to draw some creeps. If you
Oh yeah.
have a public account and you occasionally post a picture with your family, obviously it's not 100% safe, but it's less likely than someone who's now posting their kid dancing. Oh, my kid won third place. So, I mean, those are the
Yeah.
things where they might feel innocent, but if it draws someone's attention who fits into that category of creep, then okay, now something could happen.
Yeah, I kind of laughed because I can hear my wife in my head. My daughter has a YouTube account and she's 5. She started when she was 3. And this is something like I didn't even think about. You think about the creeps of like, okay, in person kind of creeps, but now it's like I feel like AI wasn't even what it
No,
is. And
yeah.
it's like the Wild West. There's really no safeguards or guardrails for like this kind of, you think there should be though, right? Like, can
Well,
we
I think
stop AI chatbots or AI stuff from just creating nude images of people? Like that just seems like a very basic thing it should
yeah.
be able to do.
Right now, there's law being pushed in Minnesota that would make that creation of any person that is your face on a different body or video would make that illegal. Right now, Elon Musk is going to fight that towards the Supreme Court. So, just like anything else, the government is slow to
Oh,
catch up with technology and progress. But part of that is, okay, here we are. We're going to now say, you can do this. Well, that's disgusting. Let's make that illegal.
yeah. And I guess Photoshop always existed, right? So it was possible, but I feel like the barrier of entry on Photoshop is much harder because you have to learn
Yeah.
it and there's some technical skills behind it. But between now, it's just some stupid prompt and you could have an image in minutes or seconds or
Yeah.
whatever. And it's just like anybody could do that. And so I think that it's kind of opening the game for, unfortunately, like it's making me worry to have photos and videos of my own kids out there and knowing that like I can protect them in person, I feel like, but I can't protect them virtually because of who knows. So moving on to the deep fakes and the chatbots, because I think that this is the new wave of issues here. And the chatbots more specifically of kids taking their lives because they're talking to a chatbot. And the chatbot's encouraging them to take their lives. Where do you where do you see this going? And is this something that like I think there's been some real life cases like this where a girlfriend has encouraged a boyfriend. I forget the name of it, but I think
Yeah.
it was in Boston. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
kind of like that, right? So it's kind of like a real like an automated version of that. What's your take on this? Like, is Is that something that you just feel like is just going to get more and more common as we get more? I mean, I'll be honest, I talk to Gemini almost every day. I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? What question should I ask Eric? Is this a good
Oh,
question? Or
okay. Well, I
how's
mean,
my
that's
lighting?
yeah,
Or
yeah, that's
so
different.
like innocent stuff, but right. But I do lean on it sometimes going through like a mental episode. I'm like, hey, Gemini, kind of pump me up here today. Or because I'm thinking about teens and I'm like, they are very
Yeah.
emotional and they go through these highs and lows. And they're like, if they are talking to a chatbot about, oh, am I a loser? Or, oh, am I ever going to get a girlfriend? Or if it says something like kind of, it sends them down the negative path. I could see how it'd be very easy for a vulnerable teen to then act upon whatever advice. I guess what I'm getting at is, where do you see this going and how big of a threat is this right now?
Well, I think it's a threat to the vulnerable. So there's cases where a man killed himself because he was continually going to one of the AI bots, and eventually they said, "Okay, you should kill yourself." It's part of someone who is having a sensitive mental health and now is relying upon AI to support them rather than friends, family, or a trained therapist. So AI is cheap now, so you can turn
Yeah.
to it. Therapy may not be cheap or available. And so it is those who are vulnerable who can fall into that and can suck you into a world where it's different from you saying, "Hey, Gemini, tell me something good about me." Okay, now you're having a 2-hour conversation. That's
Yeah.
different. If Gemini is your girlfriend and you're like, "Hey, talk to me this way," that's where you got to break free and not get into that. And so I think the role that you play or I can play is recognizing people in your life that could be vulnerable, listening for those cues where they're mentioning Gemini again, that this is coming up, and then being available to talk to them because they may just need to be snapped out of like, hey, you're getting pulled into something that is not real, though it feels so real or fulfilling.
Yeah, it does. I went through the loss of my dog this year and I relied a lot on Gemini. And I got into that state where it was like, it
Yeah.
was really, I felt like it was helping me through it. But then some of the stuff, I feel like it was just telling me what I wanted to hear and so in some ways. But I just like relied on it too much. So I could see a teen going through a hard time, a breakup, going through social isolation or something like that, where it's like, okay, you're going to lean on this AI, right? Because it's free, it's accessible, or
Yeah.
it's cheap if it's not free at this point anyways. And so I could see that happening. And we have some stuff in the chat here. It says also with AI voice duplication, you need to set up a code, word phrases with your family that when someone calls with an emergency, you can prompt and verify it's really who they are. The AI voice duplication, Eric, is that something that is also like very easy to do? Or I mean, is it just
Well, Ryan, I don't know how to do it, but
you're
yeah,
the
I mean,
technical guy. Come on.
it's out there enough. And I think we talked about this last time. If not, I'll just say that's a great idea. But having
Yeah.
a phrase to call back on, like, hey, this is our password. Okay, if you're really with my mom, and that's AI, that's also real life. Like, if you want to send somebody to pick up your kid, then yeah, like, I'm with your dad. Okay, then you would know the password because
Yeah.
my dad would have given you the password.
And okay, great. And the question that came in was, if your kid's being sextorted, what's the actual move? And you answered it in the comments, I believe. You said you would call the
Yeah.
local FBI, get their learn direction from that. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, that would be immediate. And they're going to say, look, this is a scam. Do not pay. They're going to have, they may not have the definitive answer, but they're going to have a better answer than somebody who's just caught out of the blue and is also
Wow.
working in a very heated environment. So you're threatened. You're going to make poor decisions. FBI is like, yep, let's take care of this in a more cool manner.
That's crazy. And the Cops TV says, yes, it's easy. Someone can get your voice from YouTube and copy it with very little training. It's crazy how much stuff is out there now that it's like whack-a-mole. Like, what do you focus on as a parent, as a dad, as even if you're not a parent, if you're in that circle of an aunt or a grandma, or as I know I have some family here on
Yeah.
this chat here today. Jeez, keep your social media locked down as much as you can. Yeah, like I feel that, but I'm also like, as a content creator and as a someone who's trying to get my dog, like I feel very conflicted on like, okay, obviously you have to be out there. I have every damn social media you possibly could. at this point, because it's like you kind of have to. And then it's like, well, I want my daughter likes doing videos, but then I'm like, I know the flip side of that coin. I know that
Mhm.
there's like, I can't help but think of like little John Benet Ramsey like all the time of
All right.
like how she was in those circles and she was kind of like doing her dance and popular and all that, and how that ended up. And like obviously it keeps me up at night thought, but it's also like I don't want the terrorists to win kind of mentality too. So I'm kind of in this middle ground of like I don't know how to proceed.
So it's not foolproof, but the best medicine that you can put on your family and your kids to at least stave off some of that is, again, that emotional and supportive safety, such that your child doesn't fall into I'm so depressed, I can't talk to my dad, and God knows I can't
Oh,
talk to my mom, so that the safety, the external safety that you're talking about comes from them feeling that safety from within the family, where this is the place where I can go for help.
yeah. I have a question here from Space Donuts. So, first day of school, we got school coming up here in Arizona next week. Kids go back. What should we do to kind of what should my child or what should my child know before their first day of school to help them stay safe?
So there's two lines of thought here. So the one line of thought is you teach them the run, hide, fight. You make sure they understand that, does your teacher know this? Have there been trainings? Like, where to go? How do you feel in your school with this situation? And the other line of thought is, why do you want to traumatize your child that they're going through years of lockdown training and active shooter training? And that's a tough thing to do. So I mean, myself, as long as you can keep it, knowing your child's level of fragility, what they're able to handle, then maybe talking about what to do when there might be an active shooter.
Yeah. I feel like, yeah, you have to level it to your kid. And right now, my kid is like, she gets worried about the fire alarm, and she's like,
Yeah.
why does fire exist, Dad? Like, how do you explain? Like, I don't know. Like, but it's like the thread's out there. Like, she's like very unsure why they even are a thing. And I'm like, well, honey, fire, we use that to cook dinner, keep us warm around the fire, sometimes cook s'mores in the summer or whatever. Like, so I was trying to like rationalize it with her, but she's 5. And so it's hard to, but like as a teenager, yeah, I mean, I guess you would just, they kind of are aware though, right? Of like all this stuff exists, but is it more of like they're in this invincible like stage of their life? They don't feel like it's ever going to happen to them, or I mean,
Kids are going to be
how do you handle it
different.
with your teen? Yeah.
Yeah, kids are going to be different, but at least in this avenue, they were not invincible. They were afraid and they would talk to me. And what I explained to them is this can happen and here's what you would do. But otherwise, let's think about this, that school shooter has to be in your school, and that's random. And in that school, they have to be near where you are. And when they go to that room, they have to be able to target you, and in order for you to be harmed, they have to be accurate in their shots. So there's a lot that goes on. And so when you follow the bullseye fallacy of reasoning, where, yeah, but this kid was killed, well, that's like shooting a wall and then drawing a bullseye around it. When you think of it otherwise, the chances of randomly this happening in your school and the violence coming directly to you is very small. So be aware, know what to do, but don't perseverate, because you will almost certainly go through your life and not experience this.
And Eric, in light of everything we've talked about, what's one thing parents can do this week, something small maybe, to keep their kid measurably safer online?
I'll say it this way. Here's a very practical tip to follow up what I've already said. Hug your kid and say, I hope that you can always come to me with anything, and I will support you and not judge you. And I will look to do the best for you. So maybe you think you've given that attitude to them. Maybe you think they already know that, but saying it directly, to say, anything that you come into, I hope I've shown you that you can bring it to me, and I'll only work with you to make your life safer.
Dude, that's powerful, man. Can you tell people, we got that beautiful looking poster behind you, man?
Oh,
Can you
look
tell
at
everyone
that.
about that book title or that book cover that you got there, and when's
That's my good
it gonna
side.
come out? How can we get it?
Look at that. That's my good side.
Oh, dude, that's a cool photo.
So if you think it's crazy to hear a story about a Baptist pastor who was in the FBI for a quarter century and never handled a gun, but then was on the SWAT team and a firearms instructor, then the book Irreverent: From Saving Souls to Chasing Sinners is for you. The book is scheduled to come out in October. My wife's company, Weaving Influence, is going to publish it. We're also in some discussions for maybe a more traditional publisher, but all the same, if you want to follow along and say, hey, that Eric guy sounded kind of cool, I want to tap into some of his ideas. And as my website develops more, maybe even get some of the a clip of some of his old sermons that he used to do back when he had long hair and looked like Jesus. You can go to my website, which is preacher2breacher.com.
These threats, the AI deepfakes, the fentanyl, the online predators, they're real. But the panic ends now. You don't need a miracle. You need an operational system. Audit your house, test your boundaries, and build your digital firewall. Don't let your kids be a pipeline for these threats. Defend the kids, run the house. Big thanks to Eric Robinson.